Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of The Probe. Well, the budget 2024 as presented by Finance Minister in Parliament last week will see a debate starting tomorrow. There have been budgetary workshops in Parliament this weekend. They didn't go outside Parliament. But really tonight we are focusing, I'm turning the microphones over to you, as always, the audience. Many of you have been asking what exactly is in this budget for you. Does it cater to your needs? What exactly does it do? Will it reflect in your pockets, amongst others? Tonight, you get to ask all the nagging questions, and Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, is my guest. He's also the MP for Karaga. He joins us via Zoom tonight so that we will take all your questions. But first, let me break down a bit more for you what we saw in Parliament as was read by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. And many of you might have seen the highlights already. If you haven't, let me just take you through a cursory look of what it is for the ordinary person in terms of budget 2024. That's the hashtag. Well, as it stands now, let me start off with the tax reliefs that we've seen so far in that budget. There's a zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. There's an extension. Also, zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. We also have import duty waivers for raw materials for local manufacturing of sanitary pads. And this has been hailed by many groupings. And then also there's an extension of zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. We've also seen a waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for 8 years. There have been questions about this, but whatever it is, we'll get to delve deeper into it. And we've been hearing from the GMA on this. They have a showing in the budget. Government is to engage GMA on waivers for vehicle importation to ease doctors' transportation burden upon passage of the Exemptions Act. We also have grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery, equipment and inputs, and this one, medical consumables and also raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. Part of the tax relief. We've also seen a waiver of import duties on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years. So that's what has been announced in terms of tax reliefs. We also have some taxes reviewed a bit upward. Government is to review and expand the environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging and industrial and vehicle emissions. Government is also to review the Stamp Duty Act 2005 Act 689, and bans subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded while the specific rates will be reviewed upwards. So these are the 2 reviews that we've seen. Now, according to the Finance Minister, government has renegotiated the contract terms of the 160-bed La General Hospital project and will now be funded through the national budget. The contractor is expected back on site this week. So that was next week, but it is this week. Budget allocation is 150 million Ghana cedis for 2024. That's on the La General Hospital. Made a lot of showing in Parliament last week. We'll be delving deeper into it, whether that money has indeed been released and when exactly that will happen. We're told the contractor will come back to site this week. Something we'll be checking. Now let's take a look at the macroeconomic targets. First, the overall real GDP. At least 2.8, that's the target. We have our inflation rate at least 15% for 2024. We are currently about 30% and over. Now, our gross international reserves, the GIR, is less than 3.0 months of import cover. We have 3 months of import cover. That's what it looks like. Now, let's take a look at government cutting down on expenditure. Is one thing that has been highly talked about in terms of what are the sacrifices government is intending to make as they tell us to also tighten our belts. Let's take a look at the fiscal projection, 2023 versus 2024. I'll take a look at the ones excluding the expenditure. Now, for revenue, in what you see, the green is 2023, as you see up there, and then the yellow, or the mustard, some will call it, is for 2024. For revenue, we have 143.9. That's for 2023. Then 2024, we are taking a look at 176.4. Then expenditure, excluding arrears, for 2023 is 190.9. We also have 226.7 for 2024. That's excluding arrears. Then it gives us a fiscal balance for 2023, 47. Then we have 50.3 for 2024. That's the fiscal balance in terms of what we are looking at, excluding arrears. Let's take a look at it, including arrears. This is how it looks like. For revenue, 143.9 for 2023. Then we have 176.4 for 2024, including arrears. In terms of expenditure, this is the numbers we are looking at. 205.4 as against 238.3. That's including arrears. Then we have a fiscal balance of 61.5 and 61.9. What really is going on here? I'm sure you would want to take a look at this and take a mental note of this, because we'll definitely be coming back to it. So is government really cutting down on expenditure? We have one excluding arrears and one including arrears, and this is the fiscal balance that we get. So going on, DDP, this is much talked about. We've been told in Parliament that it's been concluded. According to the Finance Minister, we successfully concluded the DDEP, and we are making steady progress on external debt restructuring. That's the announcement that was made in Parliament by the Finance Minister. But really, are we still on target in terms of getting the second tranche, amongst others, is what we are looking at. What's our talks internationally? Yeah, we'll go on to the next slide. And the big 5 exchanges in terms of the DEP, the type of exchange, we have the DDEP, the first leg. This is what we raked in. The target was 60.9 billion. Amount exchange at 87 billion. Participation rate, we got a 90.7%, a whopping rate there. The pension funds, 31 billion. That was the target. Amount exchange, 29.6 billion. Participation rate, 95.3%. The local bonds, in terms of USD, 809 million was our target. We got 742 million amount exchanged, and 91.7% in terms of our participation rate. Cocoa bills, 7.9 billion. 7.7 billion is what we got. Our target was 7.9 billion. So that's also a whopping 97.4% participation rate. Bank of Ghana non-marketable bonds, 70.9 billion. Ghana cedis was our target. We had 70.9 billion, 50% haircut there. 100% participation. So a total of 214.9 billion Ghana cedis. Amount exchange 203 billion Ghana cedis. This is where it looks like what happens to the fiscal space, what exactly will be the use. That's the big 5 exchanges in terms of what we had. So trying to give you a breakdown largely of everything that we heard in Parliament, what really concerns you as an ordinary person. So the external outlook, sector's performance will largely depend on the conclusion of negotiations with the country's external creditors. Where are we exactly with that is the key question for many of you. Now, let's look at the fate of the cedi. And these are the factors in terms of going into 2024. What really will be the fate of the cedi is very key. The exchange rate is expected to remain stable, supported by continued progress with the IMF supported program. We have the first tranche, 600 million. Looking forward to the next tranche, another 600 million. Expected inflows from the cocoa syndication loan, and we saw a passage of it in Parliament towards the end of the week. Then we are taking a look at the second tranche of the IMF loan. Key when that is coming in, and then mining inflows. These are the factors that will look at the fate of the cedi, will actually determine the fate of the cedi. So in terms of the ordinary person, this is your case. 2024 budget, that's budget 2024, that's the hashtag. And it's a good time, if you haven't sent your questions in already, if I don't have it already, it's okay for you to send it in. Ministry of State at the Finance Ministry, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam is my guest via Zoom. We'll take all your questions. A quick turnaround, then we get talking. I am Emefa Apau. This is The Probe, live on the Joy News channel on Joy 99.7 FM, affiliate across Ghana's 16 regions. We are on myjoyonline.com and all our social media platforms. Please do stay with us. We're right back and we get talking.
for an exhilarating experience at the main fair of the 2023 EcoBank Joy News Habitat Fair. Join us at the Accra International Conference Center from Thursday, November 23rd to Sunday, November 26th, 2023. Doors will be open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. each day to welcome you. This year, we are diving into the theme of home ownership, exploring the nuances between affordability, comfort, and luxury. Whether you're embarking on your home ownership journey or looking for upgrades, this fair is your destination. For all things housing, encounter a comprehensive assembly of stakeholders from Ghana's housing and construction sectors. Engage the experts across the spectrum of home creation and enhancement. The EcoBank Joy News Habitat Fair is in partnership with EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank, and powered by the Planned City Extension Project from Cities and Habitats. Rent to own. And sponsored by Elegant Homes and General Constructions Limited, where quality meets value. Global Lighting, your solution to quality lighting. Syntex Tank, Air Strong, Air Tough. Springfield Estates, where dreams are built. Virtual Security, complete security solution. DBS, your roof experts. Virtual InfoSec Africa, security solutions by design.
Alphabet City, the ABC of Home Sweet Home. Saint Gobain Weber, Gyproc, Proroc, Placo, Isover, making the world a better home.
Clifton Homes, beautiful homes, wise investments. The Kissington Heights, Airport City, Kumasi, by HDG Homes Limited.
On the 25th day of November, Africa will be moved by music. It's the 11th Guinness Ghana DJ Awards, powered by Smirnoff. Who wins what? Who wears what? The back-to-back jams by the hottest DJs and your favorite music stars. Celebrate the biggest night of music as we recognize our iconic DJs. Don't miss performances by DJ Sky, Stoneboy, DJ Nice, Master Q, Gal Dem DJ, Samini, Lil Wayne, DJ Sly, The Mask DJ, and all the way from Netherlands, DJ Polyester. Dial *713*33*33# to get your tickets to this unforgettable night of great music. The Guinness Ghana DJ Awards is powered by Smirnoff and sponsored by Game Park Ghana, Virtual Sound Lab, DSTV Aquaba Magic, PC Entertainment, Hooked On Entertainment, with media partners Joy 99.7 FM, Hits FM, Joy Prime TV, WhatsApp TV, GhanaMusic.com, The Radio Advertising People, and Showbiz TV.
Sankananga Puchu.
'24 budget, what's in it for you? That's what we are looking at, the ordinary person's view tonight here, and your questions here on The Probe. My guest tonight, debate beginning tomorrow. Are we ready?
Well, we are ready because the budget has been presented, and as is usual with our parliament, which is also a constitutional issue, as well as the standard orders of parliament, MPs are required to debate the motion which was moved by the Honourable Minister for Finance, the Honourable Ken Ofori-Atta, and that is what by debating the budget. It's actually a motion on the presentation of the budget, and so it is important that this platform is maximized, and then we expect that members of Parliament will debate this dispassionately taking into consideration the interests of the people of Ghana and the overall development of our country.
Well, this can safely be described, this particular budget, as the very last budget, safely classified as the very last for the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, or the President for that matter. But really, looking at it, is that really it? Is that all, or there's more?
Maybe we can say this is a full budget, full final budget, but the Minister will be presenting a mid-year budget as well in the course of next year. And then before the end of the year, November, we will have to also present a 3-month budget in the transition before the new government will come and present a full budget for the year. We
ask, is that all because indeed it's been classified as really in Kunim budget? Does it really qualify to be a victory budget, you say, from what you've seen and what we heard?
Well, I think that this budget follows the structure of previous budgets in terms of the chapters, except that this year we have, in addition, a chapter on the IMF program, because we are implementing an IMF program and we've agreed with the IMF some fiscal measures that we have to put in place. There are conditions we have to meet. We've also negotiated some structural benchmarks which we have to implement. And so these are included in the budget. But apart from this, the real chapters that we are all familiar with in terms of the growth of the economy, you cannot say that it is empty as some people have described that, because when your economy is outgrowing an IMF projection, the IMF projected we're going to grow at 1.5%, and we grew at 3.2% average over the first half of the year. And if you look at the trajectory, we are likely to end the year by between 2.8 to 3%. That would be significant. Don't forget that we are implementing a consolidation program, and when you are doing a fiscal consolidation, growth suffers. And therefore, in the midst of this tight consolidation, you are supposed to generate more revenue. You are supposed to reduce expenditure, which we are implementing in order to achieve a fiscal path.
Reduction of expenditure is the issue. Is government really committed to reducing expenditure?
Well, government is committed to reducing the expenditure, and we have demonstrated that this year, in this year's budget. We were supposed to be spending on program 121.7 billion. We actually spent up to September 104 billion cedis, which means that we have spent about 14% below our program budget. And if this is not expenditure control, then I don't know what it means. And so for government to be able to contain expenditure to the extent that we've spent 14% below program, that shows that we are demonstrating expenditure control commitment. And we are going to ensure that we see that through the year, and also in implementing the 2014 budget, we should be able to repeat what we have done this year in terms of expenditure and commitment control, so that we don't spend outside the budget. Let me also say that we've agreed to the IMF to achieve a fiscal path. This year, we are supposed to be achieving a primary balance, which is the fiscal anchor of the budget, of deficit 0.5%. As I speak to you, so far we have achieved 0.4%. It means that we are even doing better than the fiscal path we agreed with the IMF. We are also supposed to achieve a primary balance on commitment basis of surplus 0.5% for 2024. And so if we have done it in 2023, there is no reason why we should not do that in 2024. And so we're committed to this, and we will ensure that we do not deviate from the fiscal path.
Okay. Well, we're hoping that we'll break this down really to the ordinary person. A number of questions, I must say, we've been hit with a number of them. We'll get into it. But there are a few updates that we would like to get in terms of some of the things we heard and outstanding things before the budget was presented. But if you were to tell the ordinary person the two innovative policies or interventions that will give the ordinary person hope, what would it be in the budget?
Well, I think it is important to recognize that for the ordinary people, particularly the more vulnerable people, government is determined to increase the allocation towards social intervention. And that means that we are determined to protect the vulnerable. Most of the time, when you have an IMF program, it is all austerity, 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 and it hurts ordinary people. But this time around, this government has negotiated certain ceilings for the social spending. The school feeding program, for example, has been doubled, and this we have agreed with the IMF to do that, and they did not have any problem with that. LEAP, we have doubled LEAP, Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty. We've doubled that. The National Health Insurance Scheme, we've given them more money. Capitation grant. And so to have negotiated these social interventions in the IMF program is very innovative, something you don't see under an IMF program. And therefore, the ordinary people feel safe and protected that with the effects associated with an IMF austerity program, there is some relief, that we are giving to them in order to enhance their living conditions and in order to assuage the effect any austerity measures associated with the IMF program will have on them. The second one, if you want innovation, is about what we call the Fiscal Stability Fund. You know that government implemented a DDEP program, and that affected some of the banks. So far, some of the banks have started reporting profits. I'm sure you are monitoring that. But there are others, especially the banks with state interest, which were affected by the DDEP. Government is introducing a Fiscal Stability Fund, which is mentioned in the budget, about $500 million to be provided by the government, and the World Bank providing $250 million, making it $750 million, which will be used to cushion the banks, to support the banks, to make them stronger, so that those that are faced with insolvency challenges are made stronger to continue to support the private sector.
Okay.
That I think was innovative. Then let me also talk about the third innovative program, as you've asked, is the new growth strategy. Usually with an IMF program, because of the fiscal consolidation, growth suffers. Growth will have to go down, as you are not spending, because you are supposed to control spending. And therefore, government has to be intentional if you want to grow, to create jobs. And this is why the government, in the midst of an IMF program, has come out with a 5-year new growth strategy, focusing first of all on the first 15 months. And this growth strategy will focus on agriculture, on tourism, on digitalization, on industrialization, and so much money is going to be pumped into these areas so that we are intentional about growing in the midst of an IMF program. We also want to leverage private sector funding. And to that end, we are working with GIPC to bring in additional $5.1 billion of foreign direct investment, in addition to the 3 billion Ghana cedis government is pumping into these sectors I have mentioned under the new growth strategy, so that we can grow the economy, so that we can create jobs, so that we can increase the incomes of people, so that the usual notion about IMF program not bringing growth and not bringing jobs are addressed. So this, in my view, are 3 critical innovations that this budget has pronounced. And we are committed to implementing this innovative program to ensure that our economy grows at an accelerated pace.
Fair enough. You've given me the innovative ideas or interventions for you on your part. A lot of talk about the IMF. We'll be talking about the second tranche. Of course, we are expecting that November ending, we should get that board level agreement amongst others. We'll be getting into it. But this week, we're expecting that the La General Hospital release of funds for work to begin. We are told that the contractor will be back on site a week. Are we still on course? Is that a promise to keep? This week, we are seeing the contractor back?
Well, I think it is important to know that the government is concerned about the La General Hospital, and it's not intentional that the hospital did not take off. In actual fact, the contractor mobilized to site, and if you go to site, you will see equipment of the contractor. But as a result of the debt standstill that we announced, the loan that was coming to finance this project stopped because the lender did not want it restructured. And if you have to restructure, as we are currently negotiating with the Paris Club and other creditors, they don't want to restructure a loan that is yet to be disbursed. And that is fair enough. Government cannot fault them. And this is why government committed to doing this project has now made provision for the hospital in the 2024 budget. 150 million Ghana cedis is provision for the first year. And the contractor agreed to go back to site pending the payment from the allocation that has been
this week pending the promise. This week pending the promise, the contractor is back on site. His work is going to start in earnest. Is that the promise?
Yeah, the contractor is going back to site. But this is also the same thing happening to Konfanochi Hospital. You know, it was funded through donor funding, and because of the debt standstill and the restructuring negotiation, that project has also come to a standstill. Government has agreed to fund it while the negotiation for the restructuring is going on, and therefore a provision has been made in this budget to complete the Konfanochi Hospital. We have also initiated processes of paying outstanding IPCs of about 14 million euro. And so similarly, those other projects that have come to standstill because of the restructuring of the debt are not going to be abandoned. Government will have innovative measures to ensure that those projects, some time to come, will continue. And also, don't forget that once we reach an agreement with our creditors, we will have clarity which of the projects will continue and which of them will have to fund through the budget in order for the people of Ghana to benefit from these very critical projects.
Staying on the medical front, the issue about tax reliefs, I saw the one on medical consumables, a very one that most people are very much interested in, at least those with renal situations amongst others, but really would want a classification of the medical consumables, because looking at the full budget, I didn't get it in that budget. I don't know why it's not in the full budget, but we're seeing it in the highlights. Classify for us briefly this medical consumables, really. What form is it going to take? Is it just any other medical consumables? Does it include those of the renal dialysis amongst others? Some clarification.
Well, the bills, the tax bills, are being prepared, and therefore all the tax lines that are going to be affected will be detailed out in the tax bills that we presented to Parliament for consideration.
Full budget? Is that the reason why it's not in the full budget?
That is why it's not it will come in the main tax bills, and Parliament will scrutinize it. You can't even say whether Parliament will want to approve all of them as intended, and this is why it may be premature to list all of them. That may misinform the public, and so I would urge patience for the tax bills to be presented to Parliament so we can see the details. And when Parliament approves, then we will know the full extent of the exemptions that will apply.
But we are not getting a specification on the consumables just yet. It was announced. We ought to know what the specific consumables are. We don't know that.
Your interest is about the dialysis consumable, chronic dialysis. And you and I know that the exemptions were never removed in the first place. And therefore, the link of the charges, the increased charges to removal of the exemptions were wrong. And I you know that Kwalebu came out to correct that impression. However, they had an outstanding debt of 4 million Ghana cedis. And as I speak to you, the government has released money for that outstanding debt to be cleared.
So that 4 million debt has been cleared as we speak, has been released for clearance. But I'm sure there are certain measures. Are there certain measures that have been put in place to forestall any such happenings?
I think it is important also to recognize that Korle Bu, as an institution, has a board, it has management. It's a tertiary institution, and therefore they manage their finances. They charge fees for the services that they provide. Of course, there are times government will go in to support them, but these are tertiary institutions that are off the budget, and so we expect that the board and the management will institute the measures. I understand they haven't opened it yet because they are trying to come up with measures that will ensure that what happened never happens. It's really unfortunate that Ghanaian citizens could go through what they went through. That is unacceptable. And this is why this government has responded quickly to resolving that issue.
Okay. Forgive me if I have to rush you, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, because we have a number of questions I would want us to go through, including those of the audience as well. But this week also, right after the presentation of the budget, my colleague Evans Mensah interacted with the minority leader, Dr. Kasiel Latto-Forsyth. Amongst others, it appears that some 47 companies have before the Finance Committee as we speak, asking for some tax exemptions to the tune of $449 million under the 1D1F initiative. And it appears most of these companies happen to be cronies of the government. And he's asking that unless you withdraw these exemptions, they will not actually give you what you're looking for in terms of the passage or the support for the budget and revenue measures in it. Explain to us how come we are looking for the second tranche is 600 million and you're giving 449 million tax exemptions to companies that are affiliated to the government.
Well, it's curious if anybody will associate any company that is legitimately doing business to a party, without giving the basis for that. I want the minority leader to give out that basis. Secondly, we have now what we call Tax Exemption Act. The Tax Exemption Act has laid out a process by which exemptions are granted. I do not think the Tax Exemption Act has colors, for the companies that are applying for exemption, whether they are MPP colors or NDC colors. Thirdly, these exemptions are not granted by the minister. They are granted by Parliament. And therefore, Parliament debates and scrutinizes these applications for exemptions. I am a member of the Finance Committee. The minority leader is a member of the Finance Committee. And we have been scrutinizing all these applications for exemptions. And it goes to the floor of Parliament, the chamber, and you have both minority and majority members debating and approving.
But it's during scrutinizing. It's during scrutinizing at the level of the Finance Committee. That's how come he's raising the red alert, the red flags about these companies under the 1D1F initiative and these exemptions. 449 million. Is that not curious?
The Finance Committee has members, almost the same number of members on the minority side and the majority side, almost the same number. Parliament is very tight in terms of the numbers. And that also reflects on the Finance Committee. We have one member on the majority side more than the minority side. And there is usually consensus building at the Finance Committee level, just like with other committees of Parliament. And so when it goes to the chamber, you also have the minority side and the majority side, and you again know how the numbers are tight. And so if Parliament has decided that certain assumptions be granted, why would you say that they have been done on the basis of the colors of those companies? And come to talk about whether companies are MPP or NDC. What's the basis for identifying those companies? I thought those companies were Ghanaian companies doing legitimate businesses, unless he wants to say that during their time they were granting exemptions to NDC-affiliated companies. I have difficulty understanding this, and I think that Ghanaians should dismiss this with the content it deserves.
Before you ask Ghanaians to dismiss, though, in that interview, I heard him say, Dr. Amin, before you ask Ghanaians to dismiss, I heard him say that their checks at that level reveal that the companies or some of these companies have long cleared the items and already finished the factory, for which reason you are giving them these tax exemptions.
Well, if those have happened, then why will Parliament then approve those exemptions? That is why Parliament is there to scrutinize.
But that's what exactly the minority leader is doing. Isn't that the scrutiny you're asking for?
So he should lead his members not to approve it. That is what he's supposed to do as a responsible minority leader.
And that's why he's raising the concerns. It's not a concern that is worth looking into?
No, but I'm saying that if that is true, what he's saying is true, Parliament has an option to approve or disapprove it. And he is leading large numbers in Parliament. I would expect that he will use his membership to debate it when it comes to the chamber, and then to use the members to reject it as well. That is the responsible thing to do. But
help us make sense out of this. I can't understand how we are looking for 600 million in terms of our second tranche of the IMF, yet we are giving $449 million to these companies. Help me make sense out of it.
I'm even surprised about this, because I don't know where he's getting the numbers from, and I may have to find out those applications. But as I said, if you grant exemptions to Ghanaian companies, what is it for? Is it for them to go and chop that money? Is it for them to go and use that money for wedding ceremonies? No. They are going to be supported to make investments, and those investments will grow our economy. Those investments will create jobs. Those investments will help. So the issue of exemption is not an issue if the exemption is given to companies that are going to do legitimate business. But having said that, we have a Tax Exemptions Act now. It's a law which details out the processes for granting exemption, and to the effect that Parliament will follow the process. I don't think that is problematic.
Okay. And when can Ghana expect to receive the next tranche of the 600 million we are talking about? Because the IMF press release on the 6th of October announcing the outcome of its review said you must secure an agreement with Ghana's external creditors to complete the review and trigger the release of the next tranche of 600 million cedis. We've heard the ministry say that you have not missed the November 1 deadline, amongst others. When exactly are we hoping to receive the next tranche? What does it look like?
Actually, there was no November 1. I don't know where it is manufactured from. What you saw on the paper, which your station published, was indicative. But you knew that as of October, we had negotiated and finalized the staff agreement. And when you negotiate and finalize the staff agreement, it means that you have met the conditions. There are two conditions that we were left to meet. Number one condition was the presentation of this budget, which seeks to achieve the fiscal path of 0.5% surplus. And number two is to have an agreement with our creditors as far as the negotiation over the restructuring of the debts are concerned. So this budget has been presented, and so one of the two remaining has been met. We are determined to conclude the negotiation to get some agreement, which the fund has indicated to us they will accept, for them to set a board date and then approve it.
When are we getting those agreements? When are we getting those agreements, especially with our external creditors? When are we hoping to get that?
Well, we're hoping to have this agreement soon, and the next tranche should happen in the last week of November to the first week of December.
Last week of November to the first week of December. That's when we are getting the next 600 million tranche?
That is dependent on when the fund board sits and approves it, but we don't expect it to go beyond that.
But what are the risks we face if we do not get the approval by the end of the month, as we're talking about?
Well, we are confident of getting the approval because we have done our part. And remember when we signed the staff level agreement, the IMF MD indicated in a press release that Ghana has done its part. We have done our part. And therefore, we are waiting for our creditors to also do their part. And the indication we are getting is that they will do their part. And they will do it successfully and favorably for Ghana to secure the second tranche.
Okay, so staying briefly on the DDE, we currently have a fiscal space of about 60 billion cedis from the figures I've been looking at from the debt exchange program. How does government intend to utilize that fiscal savings?
Well, we will use the savings. But first of all, the savings are not bringing in additional money. You know that. or it is money that we would have paid that we will not pay. That is what I think we mean by the savings in this case. Money we would have paid to our creditors, or money we would have paid today, which has now been postponed to be paid in future because we have increased the maturity period through the DDEP. So it is not bringing additional money, okay? And therefore, whatever there is going to be used to optimize the spending through the budget so that we can be able to allocate money to growth-enhancing sectors and programs in the budget in order to be able to grow our economy.
Let's get into the rest of the questions that we have from the audience, and then we can finish up on the rest that we have in the studios as well. Yeah, if you're ready, let's go through a batch of the questions. So this one from Malpomo says, as a public sector worker faithfully paying all my statutory taxes, I find myself facing additional taxation when opting for cashless transactions. Even after my salary is taxed, transferring funds to my mobile wallet incurs taxation. A very long one. Could you please explain what provisions in the budget aim to alleviate this burden for individuals like me, transferring funds, and the issue for Malpomo. Now, let's go on to the next one. We'll take a quick one, and then this one from Michael in Afienya. How can the finance minister claim the economy has actually turned the corner when inflation is beyond 30%? Fuel prices are still up, and the city has not stabilized. Michael Afienya. Sedia in Legon says, what informed the decision to zero-rate VAT on locally manufactured sanitary parts instead of just removing all taxes as demanded by activists? Tagbo in Ketsa says, what exactly is the 220 million allocation in the budget for the floods caused by the spillage for just relief or settlement and compensation? Ni in Labadi says, has the finance minister finally found the 50 million euros needed to start work on the abandoned La General Hospital? And when is the contractor moving to site? That's an issue he's been speaking on. Opari in Akuse says, the finance minister claimed this government has created more than 2 million jobs. Where are those jobs? Yeah, should we take responses to these ones? Okay, Jessica Medina will add that to it. Is there any assurance that government will not overspend in 2024, an election year, as always happened? That's the big question. Jessica Medina, for this round of questions, we will take brief responses to your questions, and we can take another batch on that. Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, so we start with Jessica's question. Fiscal discipline in an election year, well, what will be different this time?
Well, I have already said that we have been fiscally disciplined this year to the extent that what we programmed to spend, we spent 14% below that. And we're going to carry that into next year. Secondly, we've agreed to a fiscal path with the IMF, which requires us to achieve a primary balance on commitment basis of 0.5% surplus. If we are not fiscally disciplined, we will deviate from this fiscal path. Thirdly, we are implementing a number of structural policies, and these structural policies are going to help ensure that we reform structural reforms, we reform our public finances, we reform the way agencies are spending, we reform arrears clearance issues, we reform how we budget and how cash is also managed. And so to be able to do this, one of the things, for example, is to use the gift mix system to make payments for projects. Second, if you don't have commencement letter, an MDA cannot start a project unless there's a commencement letter. And for a commencement letter to be issued, there must be a budget, there must be provision for that project. So this and many other structural reforms that we are implementing will ensure that we do not deviate from the fiscal path.
Speaking about payments, though, the issue about contractors and the stalling of capital projects, looks like we didn't see or hear any mention of amounts to be paid to contractors. What's really the status of those who are owed contractors and the stalling of capital projects? Maybe briefly you can tie that in.
Well, maybe we're taking this out of context. Not all capital projects have stalled because we continue to pay for some capital projects. Some of the capital projects are funded through the budget. We continue to release money for payment, and some are funded through multilaterals. The World Bank, the Africa Development Bank, they are multilaterals. There is no debt standstill on their financing, and they are disbursing money to people, contractors who are undertaking projects funded by them.
Okay.
Where you have the capital project stalled are the bilaterals and the commercials, which we are negotiating to reach an agreement over how we treat them. And therefore, in this 2024 budget, government has provisioned 11 billion Ghana cedis to clear arrears and
of contractors,
arrears, particularly in the road sector. And so contractors are going to be paid.
Okay. Well, 2 million jobs. Where are those jobs?
Well, a lot of jobs have been created. I mean, as we know, largely from the public sector, but there is also a great number of jobs created from the private sector. When government is constructing roads, jobs are created. And then apart from that, there have been institutional employment by the prison service, the police service. We all know that this have happened. In the medical field, nurses have been recruited. We know that clearance has been given from time to time for nurses to be recruited, for teachers to be recruited. These are all in the public sector. And this was why in the first quarter of this year, the growth that we generated was largely attributed to the services sector, about 10% or so. And this could be attributed to the kind of jobs that were made available to Ghanaians. But we also know that government, through the Youth Start, is empowering the youth. And in this budget, the 2024 budget, we are allocating $200 million towards that. And we are also seeking $150 million from the World Bank to support youth employment and skills development. So jobs are created. But people may not appreciate that, but those who have been recruited and are working know that they have been given opportunity to work for themselves and for their country.
Okay, well, you've been speaking about the La General Hospital, and so we'll take Nee's question now. 220 million allocation. You're asking if it's for relief, resettlement, and compensation. At least looking at the highlights, I see that it's for relief, correct? It's not for resettlement and compensation.
Yes, it's for relief, but also there is a component of resettlement. The minister mentioned in the budget that we are seeking an emergency support fund from the World Bank, about $40 million. Yes, that will also come to support the 220 million we have allocated in the budget, and so that we can address not just relief related.
You can also add the 1 trillion GDP that you're also looking at when the metric
increase to about 50. Just this last month, this month, the statistics, Ghana Statistical Service came to announce in October inflation rate coming down from 38% to 35%. Okay, so that is the meaning of turning the corner once it is consistent. Okay, now if you have a growth rate which was projected at 1.5%, and half into the year you are growing at 3.2%. Higher than what you grew the same time, the last time, over the last period, same time last year. It tells you that you have turned the trajectory, you have turned the corner. Now, if you have inflation, I was talking about inflation already.
Exactly.
If you have the current account balance, which was a deficit last year, and this year it is a surplus, 1.1% of GDP. It means that you have turned the corner. Okay, and then you come to the exchange rate. The exchange rate year to date depreciated by about 22%. Same time last year, it was around 30%. Okay, and from February till date, it's depreciated by just about 6.4%. So a cedi that was depreciating at 54%, now depreciating over 8 months period by 6.4%. It tells you that the trajectory has changed. And so, truly, we have turned the corner.
But how do we turn the corner, Dr. Amin Adam? How do we turn the corner when we're hearing that industry is really not growing? The agri sector, they are concerned about marginal growth, and then also the huge gap, the difference in growth in the 16 regions, amongst others. Really, how then do you say that generally you've turned the corner, you've grown, you have recovered?
You know that all sectors of the economy
cannot grow at the same rate, of course.
They don't grow at the same rate. And so, as I indicated, in the first quarter, the growth was largely influenced by the services sector, about 10% for services. In the second quarter, we saw the services sector growing by about 6% and agri sector growing by about 63%. Industry came up a little. Let's see the third quarter in the fourth quarter, and then you will see the different dynamics. Okay, and the fact that the government is also intentional now about growth, the new growth strategy I talked about, which is seeking to invest more and to attract more investment, direct foreign investment into industry. The fact that we have provided tax reliefs that will support industry. You read some of the tax reliefs that we provided. You know, that should tell you that industry will also come up. And so we are determined to grow the economy across board, but you cannot see all the sectors of the economy growing at the same rate.
Okay. Well, Mafuma wanted to find out about, you are talking about the 1 trillion. Maybe you can box that in briefly.
Yeah, we are talking about the 1 trillion.
And the metrics.
I think that the 1 trillion, 1 trillion cedi mark that we are seeking to cross next year is a meaningful metric. I mean, it is not meaningful metric. We report on the nominal GDP every year in our budget. And you know that most of the budget indicators, most of the macro indicators are measured against the nominal GDP. Whether you are talking about deficit, whether you are talking about debt, whether you are talking about revenue or expenditure. And so it is curious for me if somebody says it is not meaningful. Then why do we use it as the basis for all the analysis we do, economic analysis? Now, somebody says inflation. Inflation is 30%, so which the 1 trillion is meaningless. Don't forget that we are talking about growing the economy from the time we took over, 2017, up to the time that we are crossing the 1 trillion mark. And so there have been growth year after year. The economy has been expanding. And the largest expansion we saw were also periods of low inflation. Don't forget that. 2017, 2018, 2019, when we were growing at average 7%. Those were also the periods of lower inflation. We had single-digit inflation. And so the fact that inflation increased for 2 years does not negate the expansion in the economy in real terms over the period before COVID struck.
Okay.
And so inflation has been addressed. It has been catered for. Some people have said it is because of the depreciation of the cedi. Why not? But even if you come to look at that and you want to use the dollar, which has been the stable currency, what have we done? We have increased the size of the economy from 56 billion US dollars in 2016 to, if you want to use the current exchange rate, then you are talking about 83 billion US dollars by the end of next year.
2024? 2024? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That would have meant that we have increased the size of the economy by a whopping 27 billion United States dollars over 7-8 years. Now, if you want to use 14 cedis to a dollar next year, because next year is when we want to cross the 1 trillion, then you are talking about 15 billion US dollars that this government would have added to the economy from 2016 to 2024.
Okay.
But if you even compare this with the NDC, who are making all the noise about the 1 trillion being meaningless, what did they do? Between 2013 and 2016, they actually contracted the size of the GDP. Because in 2013, the value of the GDP in dollar terms was $64 billion. By 2026, when they left government, it had reduced to $56 billion. It declined by about $8 billion United States dollars.
Okay.
And so across all analysis, whether it's real analysis or academic exercise, or you want to do economic analysis, this government has done so well within this period that we have been.
Reason why you maintain that you've turned the corner. But there was talk about fuel, for instance, because people say even though you turn the corner, it's not felt in their pockets. Well, it brings me to the issue about the gold for oil deal. This initiative really, actually, how has it translated into cheaper fuel on the market, you'd say? Briefly.
The Gold for Oil program was intended to stabilize prices. Mm-hmm. And we noted that the increase in prices, arbitrary increases and the high increase in prices was due to the exchange rate volatility or depreciation. Mm-hmm. As a result of this, the BDCs were using what we call forward exchange rate in pricing petroleum products. Gold for Oil came to address the forward pricing of petroleum products because don't forget that the prices had gone beyond 20 cedis per liter, 20 pesos per liter. And we managed to bring it down through the Gold for Oil to around 12 pesos per liter. And okay. From that point, it's been stable. Between 12, 13 pesos per liter, it's been stable. And that is what the Gold for Oil was intended to achieve.
So I'm hearing the minister. I'm hearing the. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can conclude on that. The forward pricing of petroleum products as was done by the BDCs because now they don't use dollars to buy petroleum products. We use cedis. And also, in the past, you needed $400 million US to import petroleum products into Ghana. Mm-hmm. Because of gold for oil, the demand pressure for dollar has gone down. Up to $250 million US is no longer needed to bring in petroleum products. Okay. And so the gold for oil has really helped, and that is also a contributory factor to the stability of the cedi against the dollar. Well, we've turned successfully that corner. One wonders why we still have COVID levy in place. Is we've had the businesses just before the budget, they were hoping that at least that particular levy would go. Why is it still there? What's the justification? Briefly.
Well, you recall that during COVID, we spent a lot and we had to borrow to spend. Mm-hmm. Because as a result of the spending we did, we recorded a deficit of about 14% in 2020. And this deficit has to be financed. Mm-hmm. And you can finance the deficit by increasing revenue, through increasing taxes, or by borrowing. Under the circumstances, people were already hard hit. Okay? And therefore, you could not increase taxes in many ways. So we borrowed to finance our deficit. Okay. And so even though COVID may have abated in terms of the contraction of the disease and the spread of the disease, mm-hmm. the debt burden associated with COVID still exists, is still with us. Okay. And we have to be able to address that.
What would you say to the business community that say this particular budget is not business friendly?
Well, it depends on how they look at it. If there are issues that they wanted us to address, which have not been addressed, they may have that conclusion. But there are other businesses that have lauded this budget, maybe because issues that they had have also been addressed, because we had consultations with industry, with businesses. And this is why you have all these tax reliefs going to support businesses. Okay. The tax reliefs are not for granted. Don't take them for granted. They are all associated with businesses, including new businesses that we want to create. The electric vehicle business, we want to create that business because we are faced with climate change and the world is moving towards electric vehicles. And so we are not only supporting existing businesses, but we are also helping to create new businesses so that we can a better way to grow our economy.
Is it true that Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is resigning?
What for?
That's all we've heard.
Taken us out of these difficulties. That we have recovered, and you can see all the figures showing that we are recovering, and the signs of stability are showing. Why do you want him to resign?
I'm not asking. I'm not wanting him to resign. That's what we heard. So I'm asking if that's the case.
And I'm giving you my answers. So
okay.
You may want to argue with people who have said that.
Okay, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, we are grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us here on the probe, for taking our questions.
Always my pleasure.
We are grateful. And that's the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry and Karaga MP, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam. For our radio audience, The Work of Jesus is up next. Many thanks for your company. There's more when you log on to myjoyonline.com. I am MF Apao. Have a good evening.